Joe Bostock.
BBC Radio Leicester.
Gaming and religion. Now, you might not think that the two of them fit very well together, but a gaming app called Follow JC Go has been approved by the Vatican. It's a bit like Pokemon Go, but it's got spiritual dimensions to it. And it got me thinking, is there really such a thing as a spiritual video game or a faith-filled gaming app? Well, I'm sure one man who can tell me is Andy Robertson, who's a freelance journalist who's writing a book all about it called Taming Gaming. What do you reckon then to this app?
I think it's a bit of fun. Reading up on it, the idea is that it provides a way for the church to sort of recreate a game that already exists, really, but with a kind of an idea of getting them into a faith perspective. Is maybe an example of the sort of church following the world and copying something that already exists rather than doing something original. So on that respect, I think it's not as good as some other examples.
Well, what is out there then?
So, I mean, video games in general do offer a wide range of experiences, and I think that's something often we think of the word game and we think of either violence or entertainment, but actually there's a whole wide range of games that look at this topic of spirituality. One game that I think is really interesting is a game called Bury Me, My Love, which is you play the role as a husband of a Syrian migrant, and together you over a conversation, you help her travel from Syria to Europe. So that's not specifically spiritual, but I think it creates an experience that's very different. There's a game called That Dragon Cancer, and again the name sort of shows it's got quite a deep and meaningful topic. You'll join a family that has a sick child, and in the game you travel with them as they kind of hope that their child's going to get better and going to be healed, and it looks in quite a deep way at that topic.
I'm going to say though, Andy, it doesn't sound much fun.
Well, I think it depends how you define fun. Having a whole range of experiences, some of them will be just on the entertainment end, and some of them are more on the kind of engaging with a topic in a way more like you do in a film or in a TV series. And I guess the interest there is that you get a fresh perspective on those topics in a way that you don't with other ways of looking at them. So if you face something in a game, like the game about the Syrian migrant, I found that really quite moving. And I was connected to that experience differently to, say, watching a documentary about it or reading a book about it.
I guess the word game maybe is problematic there. Maybe that's not really the right way we should be talking about these experiences.
It is a problem because if you hear about something that's supposed to be a game, we think of entertainment and something that's kind of trivial and throwaway. And obviously then if those things are addressing topics that are substantial and are perhaps quite problematic and troubling, then usually we see them in the headlines saying, how could a game address this topic? But the problem is there's not really a better word for them now, and kind of that's become synonymous with these experiences, and you could call them interactive experiences or non-trivial interactions or something, but it gets a bit clumsy, and so I think probably it's not going to change now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the position I'm in as a parent. I don't really know much about computer games, and all I do hear about are things like Minecraft and Fortnite. Is there any spirituality in that, or is that long gone? There's no hope with that sort of thing?
Well, I think it's something that all games do is they create a space, they create a world, and then they kind of invite us and receive the player into that world. And then when you're in that space, all sorts of different things can happen. And so if you're playing Fortnite, it is an entertainment competition about shooting people. So, I mean, if you read the backstory in Fortnite, there is some narrative there, and you could maybe read something into it. But I think more interesting is to see how games work, and they create these spaces, which then grant us permission to behave in different ways and to experience stories in different ways. And I think in that perspective, they're more like stepping into a cathedral where we have this beautiful space, and being in that space enables us to have a different experience than being somewhere else, and it enables us to act in a bit different way than if we were somewhere else. And I think that's a much better way of seeing games than just sort of like an interactive story and an interactive book.
So is this where your book, Taming Gaming's coming from then? I know you're writing it now. How's it going?
Yeah, it's good. It's a crowd-funded book, and we're about 50% funded, and I'm underway with the writing. And it's exactly that. It's looking at lots of different areas of games, and trying to help those who don't play games so much, or maybe haven't played games in the past, get a real clear understanding of what games do, what they have to offer, and that little story about how games create spaces. I think that's pivotal in lots of areas, whether it's parenting or spirituality. And then at the end of the book, the second half will almost be like a recipe book. It will have hundreds of games, so you can flick through them and find one that would be suitable for either your church or for your family or for your community group. And in a very simple way, like a recipe, tell you how to play it and have some serving suggestions of how other families or groups have enjoyed it, to try and make that more accessible to a wider range of people. Because I think that's part of the problem. There are these loads of amazing experiences. I've had some really emotional and valuable times with games, but I know that those are often locked away and they're not talked about a lot in the mainstream press. And so I'm eager to sort of put those in the hands of both parents, but also people of faith as well.
Andy, it's fascinating. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Joe Bostock, BBC Radio Leicester.
Taming Gaming, that's Andy's book, which he's working on at the moment. You might want to keep an eye out for that. It's 22 minutes past 8. Let's get the latest weather.